He and his wife, Jill, live in a former fraternity house with their many pets. Their website, houselove.org, is dedicated to the love and care of old houses. He will be selling his books, if you like what you hear, in the back during our brief intermission. Thank you very much, Ron.
Well, thank you, folks. Really appreciate you coming out. I know how hard it is to get out of the house. You got to put on your shoes, you got to open the door. I have a presentation that's usually about 40 minutes. I'm going to give you a snippet of it, about 10, 12 minutes of it. And so I'm just going to jump right in here, and Rosalie is going to help me. Rosalie, next. And let you know that in 1999, I met Jill and fell in love. And 1 month into our relationship, I asked myself, how can I cinch this deal? We were totally in sync. We loved to look at old houses. We loved to go antiquing. We had even dumpster dived together. So 1 month into our relationship, I said to myself, you know what? If I told Jill that I was going to buy an old house, I bet Jill would get very excited. She'd want to move in, we'd get married, and live happily ever after. So 1 month into our relationship, I said, Jill, I think I'm going to buy an old house. And Jill said, Ron, sounds like a great idea. I will help you look. Now, to my ears, that sounded like, Ron, great idea, let's get married. Next. So, 1 month into our relationship, we start looking for a house. Now, 3 months later, we're still looking. Now, I'm driving down St. Paul, next, and I come across this house. This is a picture from 1900. This is this block, that house on the corner, I found for sale. And this was the first house built on what was then called Peabody Heights, this new neighborhood here on the northern edge of Baltimore. Nothing out there but pasture land and country estates. Next. And here's the original ad to that, for that sale. That's the house right on the corner. So I was amazed that here on St. Paul Street, in a stable neighborhood in Midtown Baltimore, I could find a house that was for sale. I could not understand why it was on the market. Now, I brought Jill down to the house. We could not get inside, but you know, you could not tell from the outside how bad the inside was. The outside looked great. Jill was excited. I was excited. I said to myself, my plan is working. This is going great. Next. A week later, we got into the house. We found out why this house had sat on the market for nearly a year, unsold. The bank was selling this as is, condemned property. A former fraternity had owned this house for 10 years. Now, when the boys bought the house 10 years previous to this, it was in pristine shape. The lady who had lived in the house had lived there for 60 of her 86 years. When they sold the house to the boys, it was like a time capsule. So the boys walked in there and they started running amok. They ran so amok that eventually the house, in about 5 years, started falling in on their heads, and they got pissed off, and they started taking out their frustrations on the house. They took baseball bats and batted at the lath and plaster walls. They took those same bats and batted out 72 hand-turned balusters from the staircase. On and on it went. They stopped paying their bills, and finally the city sued them, the neighborhood sued them. They had a pile of citations on their doorstep. The city sent a truck out to the house and cut the power line to the house, cut the water. The boys stayed in the house for 3 more weeks, and then, overnight, they all left. So when Jill and I walked in, what we found was, it was like a neutron bomb had gone off. The boys were gone, but all their stuff was there. Kind of creepy. Lots of garbage. One room to the ceiling with garbage, elsewhere up to your hips, up to your knees. All the floors were ruined. 3 ceilings were falling in. Graffiti all over the walls. Every room had a, again, this house had sat nearly for a year, abandoned. Every room had a full refrigerator. Every time Jill and I walked by, one of us said, don't open that. On and on it went. Now, we're walking into this house, and I'm saying what everybody else said before me who had seen this house. Had said, oh wow, what a shame, what a tragedy. Too bad, time to go. Next. But Jill turns around and says, Ron, it's not that bad. Now, I'm falling behind her next, and I'm saying, it's really, really bad. Next. We turn the corner, we come to the butler's pantry, and Jill just goes off like the 4th of July. She says, Ron, it's a butler's pantry. How many houses still have butler's pantries anymore? This is so cool. And I'm, of course, dumbfounded standing behind her, and I'm pointing to the ceiling next. And I'm saying, but Jill, now here's the problem. I know I'm really in trouble because 3 weeks before this, we had seen a house that Jill liked just fine. And that house, I had walked out of that house in disgust because every room in that house had needed painting. So here I am, thinking, man, this is not what I thought. This is not the plan I was hoping for. So Jill, I'm still reeling. Jill takes me back to my apartment. She pours me some tea. She says, Ron, you're never going to find another house like this. I said, damn straight, it's condemned property. I don't want another house like this. She said, no, it hits every bullet point on our wish list. And then she reached over, she put her hand on mine, and she said, Ron, I will help you fix it up. And to my ears, it sounded like, Ron, let's get married. Right? And so I bought the house. Now the bank gave me a 203K loan, and that was a HUD-sponsored loan. And what that means is they say you can get the house up to code in a certain amount of time. HUD doesn't ask for a lot. Code, that's all they're saying. Make it safe. Don't make it pretty. You don't have to restore it. Just make it safe. The bank said we're going to give you $60,000 extra on your loan, and we think you can make it safe in 6 months. Yes, anybody looking at the house would have said no way. But Jill and I knew nothing about fixing up old houses. Not one thing about fixing up old houses. We loved old houses, but we knew nothing. And so I'm thinking, $60,000, woo-wee. This is 12 years ago now. $60,000, woo-wee. I'm going to fill the house full of workers, and I'm going to tell them what to do because I'm really good at that. And by the end of the summer, we're going to be done. We're going to pass our inspection in September. Jill's going to move in. We're going to get married and live happily ever after. Here's what happened to the $60,000. Month one, this is March 2000. I got the floors redone, I know, but I got the floors redone. Had the plumbing replaced because it was shot but full. Had the roof repaired, and because we could not save the house and the windows at the same time, had historically accurate windows put in, then the money was gone. 99% of the house remained to do. No contractors, no backup, nobody there, and I'm thinking, this is not what I thought would happen. Now, April, I'm moving to the house, condemned property, you're not supposed to live there, but I don't think Baltimore cared. Moved to the house, I said to Jill, you can move in with me. She said, Ron, I promised to help you work on the house. I didn't say I was going to live in the house. I said, okay, I wasn't going to push her. Now, next. I was in the midst of plastering hell at this point. Now, I'm all alone in the house, and all I'm doing is plastering. And there's plaster dust everywhere. Had you come to visit me, you would have seen plaster hanging off my ears and my nose, and plaster dust everywhere. And so for 2 months, I'm plastering. Now, because we were the heroes of the neighborhood was ecstatic, because this fraternity was the worst fraternity Baltimore had ever seen. So they would have thrown us a ticker tape parade. As it was, they threw us a party, we had a great time, loved our neighbors. And as and at one point, we had a lot to drink, we stood around a piano and sang show tunes until we were hoarse. It was just a great time. But then they asked me about the work that lay ahead. And I'm in the midst of plastering hell at this point, and I'm trying to explain all that has to be done. And then the neighborhood historian stood up, looked at us and said, you'll never bring it back. It's too far gone. And I thought, you creep, you don't know. We'll have it done in, and I kept thinking, and to myself I said, no, we'll have it done in 2 years. Now, notice my timeline has changed. I'm thinking 6 months to get it up to code, safe, 2 years to get the whole thing done. Now, Rick, who no longer lives here, but he was on the block. He and his partner had done this in the 70s. He was my mentor. He said, every time he saw this wild look in my eye, he said, Ron, it took us 20 years. Ron, it took us 20 years. Every time he said that to me, I said to myself, we'll have it done in 2. Now, 2 months later, I get Jill to move into the house. She brings 2 dogs, 2 cats in, and of course, every time you pet an animal, plaster dust billows up from their fur. I'm still in the midst of plastering hell. Little did I know that I would be plastering for a full year. And little did we know, Jill and I, as we're living in this house, this regular house, little did we know we would not put paint to the walls for 3 years. Now, in June, when Jill moves in, I'm thinking, okay, any day now this plastering is going to end. Now, because we were the heroes of the neighborhood, I expected that the neighborhood would just be delighted to help us with our work. So every day I would go down to get the morning paper, and I'd open the door with great expectation, and I would look down the block, and I'd look for that long line of neighbors that were supposed to be wearing coveralls and carrying tools and say, all right, let's get to work on your house. No, they had their own lives, their own jobs. We could not blame them. I understood that. Now, the minute Jill moved in, guess what? we had issues. We had lots of issues. And one of the issues had to do with the dogs. She brought 2 dogs into the relationship, and she wanted the dogs to run free. I wanted the dogs to be tied up. This is a construction zone. We don't leave those dogs underfoot. I know control issues. And so I would tie them up. I'd go back to my plastering hell, and about 10 minutes later, a dog would run that way, and then a dog would run that way, and I'd hear Jill calling them, laughing, and I'd just be thinking, man, she's got to get with the program. Now, there was no program, and this is another issue that we had. By the way, the dogs weren't fully housebroken. They showed a vague acquaintance with the concept, but they weren't fully housebroken. So the Basset Hound would leave turds by the front door every morning, and the other one would spray indiscriminately. And sometimes we'd find it, and sometimes we wouldn't for a while. Now, Jill just came in and did whatever she felt like doing. And I'm in the midst of plastering hell, and I see her, she's upstairs doing one thing one day, and then downstairs doing another thing the other day, and I'd just be thinking, no, she shouldn't be doing that. She needs to get with the program. But there was no program. I wasn't talking to her, she wasn't talking to me, we were very much at odds. We were also, at this point, summertime, I'm a teacher, I was off from teaching, so I was working 14 to 18 hours a day. In order to keep going under those circumstances, I had to soak my elbows, my wrists, and my hands in ice water every hour because the swelling was so great. I had tendonitis and carpal tunnel. And now I'd get to bed about dawn, Jill would get to bed about 9 o'clock, and she was exhausted as I. And in fact, for 3 nights I plastered the bedroom ceiling all around her and she never woke up. Now, one of the things that Jill liked to do in the morning when she got up at dawn, just as I was going to sleep, was that she would like to sing to the dogs. And she just liked to make up these songs, and dogs love to be sung to. So she gets up in the morning, she starts singing to the dogs, and the dogs, in response to her singing, would bark, and bark, and bark, and bark. And I'm upstairs trying to get to sleep, and about twice a week I would stumble out of bed, and I'd go to the top of the stairs, and I'd say, "Can't the men get any sleep in this godforsaken house?" So lots of issues going on in the house. Now, come July, Jill said, "I don't think we're going to make our deadline." And I said, no, you can't be negative. We're going to push through. Now, but about this time, you know, I'm really pissed at the frat guys, and I'm just absolutely, totally stressed out. We've got no backup. We've got no money. And about this time, I start having this recurring nightmare. What happens in this dream, doesn't matter where I am in the dream. I could be, you know, I could be playing croquet, I could be at a shopping mall, I could be having lunch with my mother. Didn't matter. In the dream, always, I would, and actually, give me another one. And actually, so what would happen in the dream, and I would sense, and another one. I would sense that I need to turn around, and another one, and look at this closed door behind me, and another one. And so, in my dream, I'd turn around, I'd find a closed door, and I would open that door, and another one. And inside, I would always find the same thing. Use your imagination, the same thing. It would be the world's filthiest bathroom. So I'm in a dream, and I'm thinking, oh, I gotta turn around. Oh, look, here's a closed door. Let me open this. Oh my God, looks like the world's filthiest bathroom. I guess I better clean it up. It was my job every night, in my few fitful minutes of last-minute sleep, to clean up the world's filthiest bathroom, which is impossible. So I'd wake up feeling defeated and dirty. Now, as I'm in plastering hell, I would find this really interesting thing. In the walls and in the ceilings, I kept finding empty patent medicine bottles. And patent medicine, as you know, is about 20% to 50% alcohol. So apparently the workers 100 plus years ago were medicating themselves on the job. And I could totally relate. Yes, you want to do that. Yes. But also, so we had this collection of all these patent medicine bottles. And what the workers did, after they emptied the bottle, they would take the cork, they would re-cork the bottle and put that empty bottle back in the wall or the ceiling and then continue working. Now, as I was thinking about these self-medicating workers, I was thinking about myself as well, and I was thinking about how much on the edge I was, because if I broke one hand, slipped one disc, got pneumonia, we're done. You know, Jill and I are at odds every day. I got no backup, we got no money, we're just on the brink of bankruptcy, and if I'm out of the picture, there's just no way that we can complete this job. If we can't complete this job, we break up, and that's the end of this dream. Now, with that in mind, one sunny Saturday morning, as I was sanding the front doors of our old house, a young man approached from the sidewalk, and his girlfriend was behind him. He called a greeting. He said, "Hey, wow, you fixing the place up, huh? You know, I used to live here." I looked up from my work, regarded the young man for a moment, and I thought, well, maybe this is the one good boy, the one good frat boy who had not damaged the house. He looked to be in his late 20s, clean cut, smiling. He wanted a tour, obviously. Next. He wanted me to show him what I had done to his former home. He wanted to show his girlfriend what it had been like back in the day. He could not have known that I was in a fragile state of mind. He could not have known that Jill and I had discovered that none of our friends and none of our neighbors could help us with this work. He could not have known, that's 12 minutes, pretty good. He could not have known that I was beginning to understand how totally lost I was in this work. I was drowning. He could not have known that, unable to thwart my wholly irrepressible and irresponsible optimism, I had invited my entire family to spend Christmas with me and Jill at our, quote, newly restored home just a few months away. Let me say that again. I had invited my entire family to spend Christmas with me and Jill in a house that was not even up to HUD standards. This house was condemned property. What were you thinking? Jill wailed when I told her of this invitation. You should have talked to me. We're not ready. We won't be ready. We won't be anywhere near ready. She looked about to weep, and I felt my face grow hot with humiliation. This was something she and I had to work out, my making major decisions without consulting her. Sometimes carried on a wave of blinding optimism, I couldn't help but feel that she would be delighted by what I had decided in her absence. I knew I had no right to do this, but sometimes making decisions with magical speed I thought would make things happen magically. I knew I had to change. It'll be all right, I said. The deadline's in September, and then we got 3 months until Christmas. What's unreasonable about that? Oh, Ron, what have you done? Oh, it's going to be horrible. And she walked away, wailing, and I called after her. It's going to be all right. But even then, I could feel the flames. I could smell the smoke of doom. Oh, Ron, what have you done? I heard her call again from downstairs. Now, looking at the beaming former frat boy, I saw everything that could not be and would not be right. You, I snapped. I wagged my wire brush at him. You and your frat boy friends, what you did, you nearly ruined this house. Stunned, the young man backed away. I heard his girlfriend say, honey, shame on you, have any idea what you did? Do you? Both of them backed away, their wide eyes looking at me. This house is a wreck. Do you hear me? This house is a wreck. The young couple hastened down the down the sidewalk, not quite running, but looking back more than once to make sure I wasn't chasing them. As I stood there, seething, I heard a ringing in my ears like a distant alarm. In August, 1 month left before our deadline, Jill insisted that we go away for a week. She rented a farmhouse in upstate New York. She drove most of the way. When we got there, all I did was sleep. I'd get up in the morning, I would walk to the side yard, I would collapse on my back. I looked like I had fallen from a great height. I'd just be lying there, spread-eagled on the grass. And I had begun to accept at that point what Jill had been trying to tell me for months, that we would fail our inspection in September. Only vaguely was I beginning to understand what a disaster Christmas was going to be when my mother and brothers and in-laws showed up at a house that was condemned property. Thank you very much.